Hello, friend. This is Legal Design Thinking in Real Life, a live series provided by Lawyers Design School. And my name is Hannele Korhonen, and I'm the founder of Lawyers Design School. I'm happy to present my guest today, Dan Jackson. And our goal is to talk about legal empowerment and how using legal design and its practical applications can help people and communities to navigate legal systems more efficiently. Hello, Dan, and welcome.
Howdy, thanks very much for having me. I'm thrilled to be interviewed or participate in this conversation. It's great stuff.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I was just actually telling someone yesterday that I will be talking to you, and I said that you're such an inspiring example of a badass and a genuinely good guy. I hope that's not offensive.
No, trust me, you should hear the way I talk when I'm not being recorded. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so really great to have you here. Where are you joining us from today?
I am in my the least NuLawLab environment you could imagine, a little corner library in my home, which is my sort of space for homework. And if I had taught until 9 p.m. my time last night, I would have been in the lab for you. But yeah, so I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, United States of America.
Great. And everybody who is watching this live, you can join the discussion with your questions and comments, and we will get to those if we can. But hey, let's start. Could you start to introduce yourself? What is your background and story?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I have a theater background before law school. I started with an undergraduate at Northwestern University, theater design, set design. Did that for a number of years before going to Northeastern Law School, and got a law degree. Graduated in '97. Did a clerkship at the U.S. Court of Appeals here in Boston, the federal courts, and then spent 13 years at a large global law firm. It's no longer in existence. Its name is Bingham McCutchen. It's now part of Morgan Lewis. And then 10 years ago, came back to Northeastern to start the NuLawLab.
And what can you tell us about NuLawLab?
Sure. Okay, so we are 10 years old, which is a miracle. We find it hard to believe that we're actually at the 10-year spot. We are the first staffed innovation laboratory at a U.S. law school. We use the term staff. We identify staff very specifically for a very specific reason. We were very fortunate that our law school established and hired staff for this lab. And so I'm an executive director. I'm a staff member. I'm not a faculty member at the law school. Our creative director, Jules Rochelle Sievert, who was hired along with me at the same time, also a staff person, not a faculty member, an artist with an MFA, and I'm a lawyer with the JD. So we were put together in this beautiful little room, which I wish I could show you, but I am not there. And given the chance, given 2 years of seed funding from a generous donor to see if we could make something work. And so we did, I guess, over 10 years. We are, I think the best way that I describe ourselves now, we have evolved and iterated many, many times of our little elevator pitch for how we articulate who we are, sometimes on a daily basis, certainly in the first couple of years. I describe us now as an innovation lab that's working to merge creative arts and law to come up with new ways of giving people access to their legal rights without having to hire a lawyer. That may sound strange coming from somebody who works at a law school and is hoping that all of our graduates get jobs. But we actually think the work that we are doing is going to expand opportunities for lawyers. We see our role in legal education as preparing the legal inventors of the future. And it's hard to believe that we've been doing it for 10 years. We've got a sort of a model that is both externally project-based, which is usually funded by external funders, almost exclusively, in fact, funded by external funders. And then we have our pedagogy, our teaching. On the project base, we bring in lots of dollars from outside organizations, like all institutions and organizations in this space do these days, one way or the other. And we partner with outside organizations who are looking to pursue legal access, legal empowerment, legal agency projects. And then our pedagogy is growing in richness, as you and I were just talking before we went live. But we see more and more a role of focusing on the education and making sure that we're building the army of legal designers that our legal institutions need to radically and quickly transform. And that looks like classes, that looks like independent studies, that looks like co-op placements, which are full-time jobs that our students do, all of our Northeastern students do. And those are the two sort of ways that we balance all of our work. And we over all of it, we try to maintain a good chunk of our time as a true sort of laboratory model, keeping the door open, seeing what sticks on the wall, throwing as many things on the wall as possible, and seeing what slides off quickly and what might stick around for a bit. So that's a little bit about that.
How does that MO work with the faculty that you are testing and experimenting and innovating?
So it depends on the faculty members, but for the most part, I would say Northeastern Law School has been extremely receptive to us. And the reason for it is the Northeastern University School of Law, based in Boston, Massachusetts, is a very unusual law school. It's the only one of its kind in the world, frankly, and certainly very, very different in the United States. It is itself a radical experiment in American legal education. It was founded in 1968 by a group of disaffected Yale law grads who thought there was a better way to teach lawyers. And the three things that are different about Northeastern are: we have a cooperative education program where students embed for a full year into 3 different co-op placements with legal employers. So cooperative meaning we're working together with employers to educate the next generation of lawyers. We teach all of our courses, at least in the first year, and really all of our courses through the lens of social justice and public interest. And then the third thing is we have a collaborative learning environment. We do that by eliminating grades. There's no GPA, there's no class rank. That allows students to work together with each other collaboratively and collectively, as opposed to competing with each other for the top 10% spot. So the law school is already a hotbed of radicalism. It is very, very far left, a very progressive law school. I often joke that most of our faculty are Marxists, and that's not too far off. And so as a result, they were like, yes, this is fantastic. Let's have an innovation lab. Our faculty director, who came up with the idea, Martha Davis, is herself a musician and incredible creative lawyer. And it was her idea to sort of create this originally intended to be an in-house research and development function. So the faculty have been, some of them don't know what we're about. In fact, the way I got the job is I was having lunch with a former faculty mentor of mine with whom I remained close. And she said, they're starting this legal innovation lab. I have no idea what it is, but you sound perfect for it. I'm not kidding. That is the exact quote. And so I threw my hat in the ring.
That's a huge compliment.
I guess so. I have no idea what it is, but you sound perfect for it. I build things. That's what I've learned. That's the one thing that I'm very good at. But there's a few things I'm good at. But one thing is working in an institution to build some new organizational function for the institution. I did that at Bingham at the law firm by helping to stand up and then run their attorney development department, talent development for lawyers. And so they were looking for, we had a design brief going in for the NuLawLab. It was a design brief that had a lot of goals. And so it needed a little paring down. But once we got it pared down and had a little bit more breathing room, at the end of those 2 years, the law school picked us up on their hard budget and put us in as a line item on their annual budget, and that is why we're still here 10 years later. And that is a big investment by Northeastern into legal design as an idea and as an opportunity, and I'm extremely grateful. I said to you, I think right before we got on, the fact that I have a staff position and a regular paycheck at a large institution to do this work is my number one gratitude every morning.
I'm just listening to you, like my jaw is dropping.
But, I gotta tell you, oh, really? Okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, you can see the people. But that's really important. That's why we've been able to be here for 10 years. That's why we've been able to sort of experiment and explore. You cannot hold a 30% of your time, energy, and resources as an exploratory laboratory model and not have that kind of institutional foundational commitment in order to give yourself this thing. None of it is, you don't have a return on investment guaranteed in the short term. You can put together after the fact, you can look at it and say, here's how we got here. Thank you very much for that 30% investment. But it's a very, very tough sell. It's a very tough sell to outside funders to say, here's a bunch of creative people, give us some money so we can sit around a room and come up with crazy ideas and see which of them work.
Yes.
They should be funding that, but that's neither here nor there.
Hey, let's talk about the work that you do in NuLawLab, especially about legal empowerment. Can you explain what that is to begin
Sure.
with?
So legal empowerment, of course, is a term that's very well developed at this point, and it's been around for a while and has really been popularized, and not popularized. It's manifested much more expertly, I would say, by other organizations. Chief among them, from our experience and our influence, is Namati, and sort of the work that they've been doing with legal empowerment structures and an incredible, rich, sort of robust analysis and evaluation. We were very quickly, when we got started, we're like, okay, that's what we want to be focused on. We do not want to focus our time on trying to provide better ways for lawyers to work. We're all for lawyers. I'm a lawyer. And we think lawyers are incredibly valuable in society, and they have played an important role in developing this architecture of society that is law. But there's so many people who need legal advice and legal help that there's not enough lawyers, and et cetera, scarcity, prices, the list goes on and on. So empowerment was something we very quickly came to. And we're like, that's something that we can get behind. And that's how we started to articulate what we're doing. And that's how we framed our projects. We now find ourselves 10 years in moving away from the term empowerment towards the term agency. Legal agency meaning ways that people can activate, enforce, get the benefit of their legal rights without having to hire a lawyer, without the help of another person, right? Empower sort of contemplates this notion of giving or delegating power or authority, authorization. And that is absolutely what a lot of this project work has been, because we're bringing in lots of dollars from outside funders, moving it into community for these investment projects that are intended to give people access to their legal rights where they don't have it now. So empowerment makes sense as a way of talking about what we've done for the past 10 years, and frankly, what we're still continuing to do. But we are, in our work, focusing very strenuously on trying to build the infrastructures within communities and institutions and government organizations to provide people with the resources, tools, what have you, for them to be able to understand and activate those rights, but without having it been sort of delivered to them, right? I'm reminded here in this regard that, years ago, it was quite, not trendy, it was in fashion and vogue for people to say that I want to devote my creative life to giving voice to people, bringing stories from their lives into the world. And that's great, but that has fallen quite out of favor as the folks who are voicing say, thanks very much, I can do that myself. I have voice, you don't need to give me that voice. And so we see a little bit of a connection there. And so that's where we're pivoting a little bit some of our focus in the way we're framing things. And of course, that's just another example of the sort of evolution. We've maintained a very, very iterative, flexible model for all of our work. I've strenuously avoided a 5-year strategic plan successfully so far.
That's an important distinction between empowerment and agency. I think that's super interesting also that you've made that transition. Is it visible in your work already, or is it just a mindset shift? Or
well, it's still on our website. We're saying well empowerment. So we haven't yet formally and we're trying to avoid doing something like a big, not interested in going out in the world and saying agency is the right word to use. If you get a lot of the people who need it, I don't give a hoot what you call it.
Action is more important. Yeah.
Right, that's the most important thing, and that I think is something to celebrate at all levels, including at the highest levels of our existing formal and extremely entrenched legal institutions, all the people who are working to do this so effectively and so quickly. There has been an enormous amount of progress in 20 years around, in the United States, what's called the access to justice movement, right? So yeah, I want to make sure that I'm being clear that when I'm saying agency, this is the conversation that Jules and I are having in the lab every few days and sort of throwing around. And again, this is the throw it at the wall. So I'm throwing it at the LinkedIn wall and seeing if anybody comes back and says, yeah, agency makes sense. Or if I hear back that people are like, that's a stupid idea, drop it, Jackson. I'll take under consideration, but perhaps not follow.
Yeah, it's a collaborative process to think about these concepts and what they mean.
I don't know how collaborative social media is, but it strives for that. We'll see if it ever succeeds.
Yeah. Maybe we can look at what it means in practice. What do you do in practice? You have maybe an example to share what you've been working on.
I do. So this, I want to share the example I want to share is a project that began its life called Stable Ground. It's been around for about 7 years, the work, 6 or 7 years. And the initial iteration of it was to use arts and culture programming in the neighborhood of Dorchester, using artists as the facilitators to have conversations about housing and security. And to do that with the City of Boston Housing Agency at the table for those conversations, not to lead them, not to frankly participate in them, but to listen to them. And we did this through a whole bunch of different things, including poetry jams, and you name it, all this different stuff. And the City of Boston came away from that experience, and the whole goal was to provide them with the tools that they need, the experience they need to understand the long-term trauma that comes from housing insecurity of any duration, and the re-traumatization that can come from renewed housing insecurity. And so they came away, the whole goal, they came away from that process. Let's think about how we can be more trauma informed in our programs, our policies, et cetera, et cetera. And so that was, we felt a successful thing that was funded by the Kresge Foundation Arts and Culture Program. That was version 1.0. We got 2.0, we're like, yes, let's expand it to the city. We hit 2.0, more funding again from the Kresge Foundation Arts and Culture Program. I want to underline the Arts and Culture Program from Kresge. Okay, so and that's really, really important. We can talk about that another time, but the value of arts funders in this space really needs to be underlined. All right, so Stable Ground 2.0 came in. We were like, yay, we get the money. This is middle of 2019, late 2019. Pandemic, coronavirus pandemic hits. And all of a sudden, there's not going to be any arts or culture programming anywhere in Boston. Thank you very much. We had already retained our artists again, and we made a strategic decision. We said to the artists, you take your stipend, do what you need to do in community, and do what you need to do to survive this pandemic, sitting in your house and no longer able to do the incredible events that you have been able to do over the last 20 years, whatever. Anyway, we had to pivot quickly. Now, it happened that we had a sort of 1.5 version of Stable Ground where we had connected with an organization in East Boston. Maverick Landing Community Services is their name, and we started to have conversations with them about housing and security. And that was one of the places we were going to expand out with 2.0. We pivoted fully to Maverick Landing Community Services, and we stood up a pandemic rapid response housing / mutual aid effort in East Boston with those Kresge funds. Kresge, they're amazing folks. Like, your call. Do what you need to do. Keep focused on the main goal, right? Arts and culture, housing and security, legal empowerment. But go for it. And so we stood up this rapid response team. We had, I think, 90 law students from all over Boston, not just Northeastern, doing both in-person and online help for people to apply for pandemic rental relief, which in the United States was both federal and state funded, large dollars going in for people to help not fall behind on rent. Anyway, it was not the easiest. But this will shock you. They created a process that made it difficult for the residents of East Boston to get the money. So anyway, that was quite a lift. We were able to, in the end, get we were able to get $1 million into the community of East Boston, into some, I don't remember how many families, that helped stave off evictions on account of non-payment of rent. There wasn't a lot of arts and culture programming in that, but we had artists at the table every step of the way because they were already engaged with the project, and they allowed us and they gave us opportunities to really think creatively about all of the problems and all of the connections. And architects helped us with the space planning for the actual physical manifestation of what became known as the Boston Housing Support Station. Fast forward not too much longer after that, but we established a really formal and good relationship with Maverick Landing Community Services, and I decided, hey, let's pursue something longer term with y'all. And so we pursued that with a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts Research Lab. This is the federal funder that funds a lot of research into arts. And so our work with East Boston and Maverick Landing right now is focused on examining the extent to which and how arts and culture programming around housing justice and housing justice reform enhances social cohesion and belonging in the residents. And we've identified that metric, that factor, It's not like an immediate, like, did you get your rental relief or did you get not evicted? No, that's not what we're looking at. We're looking at social cohesion and belonging, because that is what is required to build the political power to turn the tide in marginalized neighborhoods and communities. You have to have the political power to get the people that you want elected to make the change in the policies, the laws, the regulations, you name it. And so that's a small piece, but we think there's been so much incredibly rich work in the arts and culture organizing space that we wanted to make a contribution with these research funds. And Kresge jumped in again with that. So we now have NEA and Kresge together in East Boston, sort of trying to scale this work out. And that is, I think, that is a long game project. And not everybody gets to do 6 years on a project, but we've been blessed that we've been able to secure commitment from its large institutional funders, again, who believe in what we're doing and the work that we're hoping to achieve, both long-term and short-term.
Oh, that's so ambitious, and kind of putting all these people like artists and social sciences and politics and then law and all of this. How did you facilitate the whole project to get these individuals like law students, and how do you get them to work together?
Oh golly, every little bit and piece. I mean, it's a daily thing, right? So the project itself, again, we started with Dorchester, an artist in Dorchester, and then an artist by the name of Anthony Romero moved into town from, I think, Texas with his family, and Jules was connected to Anthony's wife, and they had dinner, and Anthony expressed interest in working with us, and so he invited our law students to our lab seminar to create some work that was going to be installed at the Institute for Contemporary Art as part of his exhibit. That started to create cohesion and trust. Maverick Landing Community Services loved what we were doing. We started distributing those materials at events in East Boston. That developed additional sort of engagement. We have always been very, 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 very good about keeping our doors open and saying, all comers, if you want to participate, come on in. And so we will have folks come into our project early on or at the midpoint for a few weeks. And does it click? Does it not? Doesn't click? That's fine. Go off and do something else. But if you want to remain engaged, we can find a role for you. We can find something that you can do in the project. So it has been a matter of pulling all that together. The piece that I would say is that's most, I'll talk about the law student stuff in a bit if people are interested, although that's just sort of classic sort of stand up and volunteer project at a law school stuff. But the thing that we do look for in the individual, so interdisciplinary collaborations, I'm all for interdisciplinarity, I'm all for the terminology. I think that it is less about the disciplines that are collaborating than the people. In the final analysis, you're not sitting down with a department or an institute, you're sitting down with a person. And that person is the one who's actually going to help you write the grant. That person is the one who's going to then do the work that they say they're going to do in the grant. So we look for people who are already interdisciplinary. We look for the social scientist who comes from an engineering background. We look for the artist who comes from a legal background. We look for the lawyer who comes from a design or theater background, right? And that has been the sort of, that again, not a conscious choice in the front end. But then we started when you get 3, 4, 5 years in, you start looking at your work and say, what's worked, what hasn't, what have we not analyzed? And golly, these have been all successful. What's something that's tying all these together? I'll tell you what's tying them together. The people at the table already have straddled 2 disciplines. They know how to make those disciplines communicate in their head. That means they are going to be more facile in communicating with a group of other disciplines, regardless of whether or not they've had contact with those disciplines previously. Just on account, sure, purely on account of the fact that they've already had that internal dialogue. Sometimes someone might call it conflict in your internal space, to allow you then to actually navigate those things when you're doing, something with, we're doing a bunch of AI stuff right now, and I'm having a dialogue with a fellow over in another school at Northeastern. He said something, I'd be happy to come and speak about this, that, and the other thing. Machine learning for math. Oh my God. Anyway, I'm like, yeah, come bring it. He said, but I'll tell you one thing, I can't say a damn thing about law. I'm like, all the merrier, all the better, by all means.
But that is so interesting that you are actually looking for people who are already in those intersections
Not
of
exclusively,
different...
not exclusively.
No, but that's
right?
kind of one indicator of
right. I mean,
good
look
candidate.
at our faculty director, Martha Davis. She's a classical musician, plays in local orchestras. Hopefully, I'm not disclosing too much about Martha's personal life. Super inspiring. Lawyer, litigator, human rights expert, all these different pieces where and I think the fact of the matter is, if you look closely at any individual, there's going to be lots of different experiences and backgrounds and disciplinary engagements that they already have bringing into themselves. And sometimes it's just a matter of, when you start working with people, unearthing what that is and giving them an opportunity to understand how they can now participate in this roundtable exercise with all these other intimidating disciplines, and participate in a way that allows them to communicate effectively with those other disciplines. That said, it took me and Jules at least, if not longer, 6, 9, 12 months to establish a shared language that we could use to communicate with each other about what the hell we were doing on a day-to-day basis in that room. She had not a background in law, although she was looking for law, because that is what she came at. We first started saying, I remember she said, I am looking for art with teeth. Law gives me the teeth. And I was like, that's interesting, because I'm looking for law with creativity, and art gives me the creativity.
There could be something here.
I know, right? And 10 years later, I guess it is. But.
Because that approach also makes space for people to actually use their full potential, like every side of them, and not just like this is the analytical and this is the my lawyer persona, so that you can actually use all that you have.
Right, it's so funny because very often, I mean, this is a conversation I have with almost every law student. I work with a lot of law students, right? And don't leave any of yourself away out of the room. When you come into a room for anything, for any collaboration, for anything, bring your whole self. And the people have been, making that case for years, for decades. And I think that particular piece is especially important in these interdisciplinary or I almost want to call them transdisciplinary collaborations, because what you're trying to do is just cut all of that siloed stuff away, that has helped to define helpfully the disciplines, but not so helpfully sometimes, as they've evolved. At the table, you are not solely limited to whatever your highest degree is. Like the lawyer at the table, don't turn to the lawyer at the table just for the law. Let the lawyer at the table also participate in the ideation, in the design, in the, all of us have the ability to do that. Now, mind you, when I sit with technologists or engineers or biochemists, I'm limited, or string theorists, I'm limited in my capacity to engage at a deep level. But I have enough curiosity and I have enough ideas that I'm going to share them anyway. Exactly. And I encourage everybody, I try to get everybody to do that whenever we're running projects, is to make sure that everybody understands that the space is a space for open collaboration and dialogue, and that no discipline stands above the others. That's crucial. Keep it a round table.
Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Can you share some lessons learned about this Stable Grounds project?
Sure.
Any failures?
Well, so of course, every day there's failures. I mean, the staffing of it, the way that I put the project together, I'm sort of the project manager, the project builder, and that's a lot of my role when it comes to the project work, and the primary supervisor for the law students and whatnot. But the plenty of mistakes, and not mistakes, but failures. Sure. I mean, one thing that we learned in the Stable Ground 1.0 is that although it was fantastic to work with 3 individual artists, the only artist that we really got traction with in the content and the substance was one who was sort of embedded in an organization, and the others were more freelanced. And so we became very clear that we actually needed, the next iteration, we needed a host. We needed an organization, an institutional host, to be our partner. And we've done that mostly, and almost all of our projects involve that. We tried something different for the first iteration. It was not as successful as we would like it to be. So that was one thing that we certainly learned. We learned over and over again, it's the people, not the position. It's the people, not the role. It's the people, not the background. And that's just something we've learned over and over again. We've learned that it's a long game. You have to do this work over long stretches. There is no benefit, especially for a large academic institution on the East Coast of the United States, in a I'm trying to come up with a diplomatic way to describe Boston, Massachusetts, but in a place where, large academic institutions tend to have controversial relationships with community, you are not going to find a community partner by knocking on a bunch of doors in the first 6 months of your existence. You have to build those relationships over time. And I would say that it's only just now that our partnership with Maverick Landing Community Services is firing on all cylinders. And that's taken a lot of work and a lot of visioning and a lot of communication, a lot of dialogue, a lot of disagreements, and a lot of bumps in the road. But then again, that's life.
That's life, and that's also the foundation for the long game that you are playing, because you can't build that long-lasting impact without that true collaboration and true trust with each other.
Trust. Oh my God, trust. Here's an example of that. When we first started the Boston Housing Support Station, the Rapid Response Project in Maverick Landing in East D, the rental relief project, and we started building up these teams of law students to help out residents in East D. We got a question every single meeting we had. We had weekly planning meetings. Every meeting we had from a community organizer, a young woman who's one of their youth leaders, Kaylee Aguiar. Remember that name. She's going places. She would press us on, are you with us for the long haul? How long does this last? Are you going away? Because that's what universities have done. That's like libraries have done that for decades, centuries, perhaps. And we kept saying, yes, it's going to be difficult. There's going to be ups and downs. It's going to be complicated, but we are not going away. We are maintaining the institutional commitment. We were able to deliver on that after 2 years, because the law school instituted a new housing justice clinic, and we were able to connect that housing clinic to EASD and to make Maverick Landing Community Services the first referral community partner for our new housing clinic. That provides a lot of, our work was not ever able to provide legal representation in evictions. We are not a clinic. I am a lawyer, I'm not a housing lawyer, right? So I would not have been qualified to supervise those students. That was big for us, but we're still with Boston Housing Support Station continues, and we're supporting their sort of community leaders as they work to provide the guidance and support. And we will continue to lift up teams of students when we're able to pull them together, which is that's always a big lift, huge lift.
That's amazing. What would you consider as the biggest result so far from that project?
From which part?
Biggest win.
For the housing support station, or for stable ground generally?
The stable ground, maybe in general, or
Oh, it's stable. Oh, golly. So that's hard to say. Biggest win. Well, on the one hand, I think we've made some really valuable contributions. Maybe I won't put the really valuable contributions to the field of cultural organizing, artistic organizing, and the role of arts in our lives on many levels. And in this regard, we are very inspired by Dr. Maria Rosario Jackson, who is currently the chair of the National Endowment for the Arts in the United States, had been at Kresge and has been a really solid defender of our work, but also a real inspiration. And so I think we feel like we have used those tools to inform the city of Boston in their approach to housing instability and making it more trauma informed. I think that's a win. I think it's a big win. So very hard. We're not measuring sort of what's the impact of those new programs or those trainings or anything like that. We don't have the resources to conduct that evaluation. We did evaluate the work there. And I think the $1 million into EASD through the pandemic rental relief pop-up was how much of a good chunk of that money probably would have made its way into the community. But I got to tell you, this process, this online forum that was created, oh God. And so, I mean, you needed a law student who spoke Spanish. These are monolingual Spanish, Central American immigrants for the most part in East Boston. You needed a law student who spoke Spanish to navigate the website, and then to keep track of all the emails that come in saying you don't have this, you need this. You had to negotiate with landlords for them to accept the federal money in a check, which into their direct deposit account, so the federal government can track it all. Some landlords are going to be like, oh, I'm not so sure I want to do that. some immigrants who are not yet citizens might not be too keen on putting in lots of information into it. But anyway, the challenges were many. But design, and legal design in particular, offered a really great opportunity to, I mean, we were doing, oh golly, how many, we had a team at one point, I think 12 people doing sort of Scrum project meetings in the very beginning of it. And those meetings were at least once a week, if not twice. And we were, the poorest law students who had project managing that had to redo all the training materials and everything, like every 2 weeks, and retrain the team, the army of law students, because the form was changing, the process was changing, this was getting liberalized, that was getting restricted. The list goes on.
Process was truly iterative.
It had to be, otherwise it would have died. It remains very iterative as well.
Yeah.
The physical station never really took off because, lo and behold, even though some of the public health restrictions were lifted, folks were still not comfortable coming in and sitting next to a stranger, even though both were wearing masks at a computer station. So it became mostly a virtual thing.
Yeah, the pandemic really threw a curveball on all of us. Hey, I want to circle back to the beginning and get back to you and your journey to legal design. You have had an incredibly interesting career, and then you transitioned from a lawyer to specialize in innovation and legal design. How did that happen? And what's your own experience been like?
My own experience has been, I've had a really interesting experience. Let's see, I started in theater design, as I mentioned. I'm somebody who is a little bit impulsive when it comes to major life decisions. And so, but I did that. My parents supported me and I had a great time doing it. It was great. I loved it. And I still do it from time to time when I have the time. And so that instilled in me the design education I got at Northwestern. Of course, it was set design, stage design, which is radically different from product design, legal design, or other, but it is a design process. It is an iterative process. It involves a very different set of constraints, but they are constraints that you have to work with. And anyway, I love that work. But I also then realized after I graduated that all of the set designers in Chicago, which was where I was living, that were successful and had like nice homes for their families came from trust funds. And I was like, oh, that's why I'm working a medical secretary job to pay the bills at the same time I'm trying to design stuff. So I did start looking for graduate degrees, and this is at the time where a lot of people were starting to say you need a graduate degree. Anyway, fast forward, chose Northeastern because of its very welcoming culture for queer, gay, lesbian, transgender students, which made a big difference for me. And went into law school thinking I was going to become a radical sort of queer lawyer, change the world with the stroke of a pen, do queer rights litigation. And very early on met some of the lawyers who were already doing that and realized those jobs were full. I was not needed, but I also fell in love through the co-op program with lawyering. And so I actually fell in love with lawyering and went into doing lawyering and landed up at a large law firm. That was a fluke. Because I had a co-op with a federal circuit court judge. This is one step below the U.S. Supreme Court. Very competitive clerkships. I know how to write. I know it was, but more importantly, I made the judge laugh. And my interview for that clerkship, when his law clerk said, "Put your resume on his desk. I'm not coming back next year. He'll consider you for a clerkship." I'm like, "Yeah, right." Like this theater kid, I still had like bleach blonde hair on my head and stuff. I mean, but I put my resume on his desk. He calls me into his office. And he said, "Jackson, you want to be my law clerk next year?" I said, "Yes, Your Honor, I would." He said, "Well, I'll hire you on one condition." I said, "What's that?" He said, "You got to tell me a joke every day." That was how I got a clerkship at the First Circuit Court of Appeals. Anyway, it worked. And that led, of course, to a career in large law firm, right, where I did talent development mostly after doing employment litigation. I left that to catch up on my sleep, among other reasons. Started a small solo practice on Cape Cod to keep my resume alive, for the most part, and sort of sat down my 401k funds. But then the job at the NuLawLab came along, and I initially took it because I could run an innovation lab. I stood up this talent development department at a large law firm as part of this sort of movement towards formalized attorney professional development within the law firms. This is something new. I can do this. This should be fun. It plays to my strengths. It wasn't until I got there, and I've been working for 6 months or so, that one of the senior faculty members, of whom I was frankly terrified when I was a student there because he was so knowledgeable and intimidating. And with whom I came very, very close after becoming an employee there. Just made a aside about something like, oh, well, this means that you get to bring your design, your set design, and your lawyer brain together to do legal design. And literally, I had to put those.
What?
What? Anyway, so I guess the thing that I would say though, with all of those things, every little bit and piece of that, what I've always done, I got the best advice from somebody. I don't remember who it was, unfortunately. Well, I wish I could credit them because it's made my life what it is today. Whenever you have a choice between options, sometimes we don't have choices. Sometimes you just need to get food on the table, so you got to take the first job that's out there. But if you ever have a choice, choose the option that is going to open more doors for you later than anything else. And so when I chose between law firms, I chose the law firm. It was a general litigation practice, Bingham, instead of it was an executive compensation or employee retirement income security act of 1974 practice. Most of you on this call will not have the faintest idea what I just said. That would have been highly specialized. That's my point. General litigation teed me up much better for the future that I had, and Northeastern teed me up much better for the career I've had, because they had a co-op program that allowed a crazy theater kid who was a good writer and a good researcher and could tell a joke to get a clerkship at the First Circuit Court of Appeals for a year, and to rub elbows in the elevator with Stephen Breyer, recently retired from the U.S. Supreme Court, who was moving his own boxes, by the way, when he was elevated from the First Circuit to the Supreme Court. I'm in the elevator with Stephen Breyer. He's moving his own boxes. I offered to help. He declined. I was like, how often does some weird theater kid get this opportunity to live in this rarefied world? And now, of course, I've turned to a career where I'm like, let's burn some of that down, because it's not working for very many people. I'm sure all the judges would be very disappointed in me.
That's such a brilliant story, but it sounds like you've always felt really comfortable being that weird theater kid, also in the world of law and in the law firm and all of those.
No, not always. No, that took time. That took
Okay.
time for me to get comfortable.
Okay.
Comes with age, for the one thing. I could give a crap what people think about me at this stage. I'm sorry. I hope that doesn't offend anybody who's listening. But you know, that came with age. I actually, this is a little bit personal, but so hopefully I won't get too emotional. But I loved the theater stuff. I was a crazy theater kid, and I was very colorful and even more expressive than I am now. And I chose law as my graduate. I was thinking about all the different graduate degrees, and I said law will be it, because I want to become more serious. I want to be taken more seriously. And so I actually, now the law school experience, of course, is law school. I got to be myself in law school, but all of a sudden I find myself at the First Circuit. I'm wearing a suit and tie every day. I'm very unusual. Of course, my judge was like, Jackson, why are you wearing a suit and tie every day? It looks like you're going to a funeral. And this is literally what he said. Anyway, it was great. I love that guy. He's unfortunately long deceased. But so I had to actually suppress a lot of my self originally, or thought I did. And I think I actually did. And when I started at Bingham, the large law firm, it was still it was a nice place, good people, still a large law firm. And I learned that early on when I was asked to fill out a form for the Facebook, which was a paid, it was a paid, every year they did it, the pictures of all the lawyers with the names and the way they went to law school and their spouse's name, all that kind of stuff. So I wrote my spouse's name in on the form, Thomas Mueller. They canceled the Facebook page instead of print that. So that was interesting. Oh boy, I hope I haven't defamed Bingham. Now cut that out from the recording, please. That may be an overstatement. They decided to discontinue the Facebook when others started raising issues with the fact that, well, I don't even know what. Regardless, that signaled to me, this is an environment where you have to be a little careful. Now, interestingly, what that experience did taught me the exact opposite, because when the head of communications came in and waved that little piece of paper and said, do you really want to do this? I was like, yes, I do want to do this. And that led me to start feeling more comfortable in my own skin. Also, the guidance and mentoring of elder queer lawyers at that law firm were exceptionally helpful. And one of them was like, wait, my husband's name isn't on that. I'm putting my name. I think it was him when the partner was the one who put his name on that. They were like, okay, time to discontinue the Facebook. But and it's taken me, so all of that, and that's where I'm always encouraging students as well not to spend that time in the closet, if you will, the personality or professional closet. I have long known, once I got comfortable with myself, and and sort of my idiosyncrasies and whatnot, I got comfortable with sort of myself. And one thing I know about myself is I can make people laugh. And for a long time I thought, well, that's not being taken seriously. Making people laugh is not. Au contraire, I always make sure we get a really good group laughing at the beginning of any meeting, because then the rest of the conversation flows so much easier.
Yes.
Especially new collaborations. If you get everybody to laugh, there's science behind it. It lowers the inhibitions. It lowers the stress cortisol levels of a new situation, and it gets you more comfortable. So I wield that not just for securing first circuit clerkships, but in all of my work. And I think that's a matter of and this is something that legal design can teach lawyers. Be your full self. Bring yourself fully. Yes. Don't walk into the Supreme Court dressed, as a bird, endangered bird, when you're about to argue a case under the Endangered Species Act, or maybe you do that. I don't know. But my point is, allow yourself to be yourself. Allow your ideas to manifest themselves in the world. Don't hide your light under the bushel. I think, what is that from? A biblical allegory. Don't hide your lantern or your lamp under the bushel. Make sure it gets out there. Why not? You only have one life to live.
I think that's the most important message for all the law schools. Well, all the lawyers, all the people in the world. Be who you are and don't hide yourself from anyone.
Yeah, I hope so.
That's so perfect. Oh, it's been so wonderful speaking with you. But before we wrap up, what are you currently working on, and where can people learn more about you?
Well, you can learn more about us at our website, NuLawLab.org. It's spelled NuLawLab.org. Again, we're at Northeastern University School of Law. What I'm working on right now, we have a first book. We've got our first book coming out shortly. We have a book contract with Cambridge University Press to deliver a manuscript, which is due any day now, which is what I'm working on, which is why I'm at home plugging away at it. A book entitled Legal Design, Dignifying People in Legal Systems. It is an edited volume. We have about 30 co-authors authors who have submitted chapters, and it takes a look at both legal design and law through the lens of dignity, and argues that as a framing concept allows us to do many things in both design, law, and legal, in this new field of legal design. And it takes a very aggressively optimistic view of what this new discipline can accomplish in the world.
Oh, wow. When can we expect copies of that book?
Well, I got to deliver the manuscript to the publisher first. So there's one last chapter left, and guess what? It's mine. And that's why I'm finishing up. Oh, just the little bits and pieces. I keep telling everyone, I'm like, never another book. Bless. I know that books are all the rage in academia now, but oh, have mercy. It's a lot of lifting. But it's a great, and it's the experience of pulling it together, and the writing I've been able to do with Jules and with Miso Kim, our design director, who's also here at Northeastern, has been an incredibly illuminating experience for us. And it is going to help us set the strategic direction of the NuLawLab for the next 10 years. And that's a blessing, notwithstanding the amount of work.
Oh, wow. So much looking forward to that.
Awesome.
Hey, thank you for taking the time to talk to us, talk to me today. It's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. And thank you for being you.
Yeah, well, that's not going to change anytime soon. Like I said, for anybody who's not yet in their 50s, just wait, it gets so much better.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Thank you, and bye.